Welcome to the 67th episode of the GameFor Podcast. In this episode, we'll talk about our Desert Island tabletop gaming picks. I'm Adam.
I'm Matt.
And this is the GameFor Podcast. GameFor is a platform to help connect tabletop gamers and to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming. Matt and I are part of a software development and design company called MilkCan. And because most of the folks at MilkCan love tabletop games, we developed the GameFor app and launched it in early 2018. We launched this companion podcast in June 2019 to help tabletop gamers get more enjoyment out of their hobby. Due to the COVID-19 global pandemic, we hibernated the GameFor app in July of 2020 and plan to bring back a retooled version of the app for Android, iOS, and web when gaming in person is safer. Until then, we'll keep bringing you this podcast to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming. So it's a couple days after Christmas.
Yes.
And so we're in that weird, I've been hearing it referred to as a liminal time period between Christmas and New Year's, where you kind of just sort of stumble around. You're not necessarily sure what day it is. You're filled with cheese.
It's a weird time. Yeah. I don't know what day. Yeah. Like, it feels like a Saturday. But
but we're here. But so luckily we figured it out that this is a day in which we would record. But in general, it's been. How was your Christmas?
Pretty good.
Everybody stayed out of the hospital.
Everyone stayed out of the hospital.
That's good. That's very good.
Yeah.
So right there.
We'll chalk that up in the win column. But yeah, everyone's doing okay and luckily staying away from stuff and having a good time. So how about you?
No, not bad at all. Got to see some family. My mom had a cold, which we thought for a hot minute we're like, well, maybe it's. But then she got better relatively quickly. But we did not. We went over there on Christmas evening for just a little while, and we all wore masks and traded some presents and stuff like that. But
nice.
she's getting better. So we're going to get together in my brother and his wife and me and my wife and her, and we're going to get together in sometime in January, and we'll all go to dinner and stuff like that, and kind of have a sort of proper Christmas just in January. But yeah, what kind of hobby stuff? I guess that's a question that we like to talk about next. What have we been doing? What have you been doing?
I actually played a couple of board games in person.
Whoa.
Well, and I more not games because it was a single game. It was Spirit Island, but we played multiple
sessions.
Sure,
yes. That's fine.
But yeah, no, that was a lot of fun. I had not played that game in 2.5 years.
Sure, yeah, no, that makes sense. Sure.
So, yeah, it had the newest expansions and everything, and that was a lot of fun.
Did you play with the family or?
No, I had a couple friends come over.
Nice.
So yeah,
nice.
No, I was excited about that, and then other than that, I got some new Vallejo paints for Christmas that are like the weathering, like rust and chip paint and all.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Dirt and all that stuff. So kind of fallen there.
Got those kits that are like maybe 6 or 8 bottles of paint or something like that.
Yeah, there's like a wash and like 2 airs and regular. Yeah, so I am teaching myself how to weather vehicles.
Nice.
Had a bunch of vehicles that needed to be painted up, and they would have been painted, but just kind of like a single coat. So now I can actually, try to finish them off finally.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. Yeah. Let's see. What did I do? I finished my OCR Bone Reapers, a.k.a. the Bone Daddies, for Warcry. I had been painting them on Twitch, and I had done, there were 10 of the, whatever the heck, they're, Mortec Guard, I believe, which are the little guys.
Okay.
And those guys I'd already done and finished on Twitch, and then I was working on the 2 HQ units. This one guy who's standing on a giant skull, as opposed to a giant skull.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And then the other guy is a guy called a Stalker or something like that. He's got 4 arms and 2 giant swords and 4 faces. I don't know. It's a weird thing. But yeah, so got those guys finished up on Twitch on Friday.
Okay.
Except for the basing. The basing and stuff, I finished painting the bases and painted the rims around them and all that jazz over the weekend. And then now I need to matte varnish them, and then they will be basically done. I like how they turned out. They really, they were a speedy paint job, but they turned out well. I liked them.
Nice.
And, so the giant skull.
Yeah.
or excuse me, the giant skull. That the Bone Shaper is his name. He's kind of the HQ unit. He's the headquarters. He's the leader.
Okay.
He is standing on this giant skull that he is using magics to like turn into more dudes and stuff.
Oh, okay.
That's what the Bone Reapers do. Is
Right.
they don't just like reanimate skeletons like say a necromancer does. They are actually like taking 6, 7, 8 skeletons, taking them apart with magic, putting them back together into these bone constructs,
Okay.
which are bigger and tougher and beefier than a skeleton, and then sending them on their way. And then these things have multiple souls stuck in them. It's a whole thing.
Okay.
Anyway, he's standing in this pose on top of this giant skull. And I spent a bunch of time like really layering and like doing like a lot of work. And I started using Monument Hobbies transparent white. They have a whole line of transparent paints, which are not washes. They're not.
Okay.
They're kind of glazes.
Okay.
But they're not washes. They're not contrast paints. But they've been around, and I've never quite gotten the hang of them. But the newest one they've done is transparent white, and that's really kind of cool because you put it on, and it's just like I have this color, but now I want it to be slightly lighter. And you can just throw white over it, and it kind of does that. I don't know if it'll work with every color. Like, I don't know if it would work like if you just took black and like, oh, if I put enough layers of this on it, it'll turn gray.
Yeah.
But because I was using already a bone color anyway, and I want this thing to look almost kind of bleached in the raised parts, I did a bunch of layering and whatnot, and it actually turned out really nice.
Nice.
So anyway, yeah, did that, and then started, what's today again? Tuesday. Last night, I started on Twitch on some more Skaven. I'm doing a second Skaven warband for Warcry. I'd already previously done the Plague Monks, who are 13 little rat dudes in little green monk robes with big sticks and knives. And one of those guys has a book that he found, and so therefore he's the leader. This new list is... Well, it's a roster, really, so I can make multiple different types of lists. But it's about 10 different... I think it's 10 clan rats, an HQ guy, another kind of pseudo HQ guy, and then there's a warp fire thrower, which is actually a small team of 2 on an oval base. They've got kind of like a flamethrower, but it's shooting warp fire. And then there's also the Storm Fiend, who's like a big robot rat, kind of, and stuff like that.
Nice.
So I started working.
You can never go wrong with a robot.
No,
rat.
I agree. I started working on clan rats last night on stream, and just started working on some skin tones and starting to work on a little bit of fur and things like that. So it was fun. Looking forward to cranking through those guys. And then after those guys, you constantly got to be thinking about the next project after the next project. I built some Khorne Bloodbound, which are basically like Blood Reavers, Blood Warriors, those types of dudes. Yep. I just got this wild hair, and I'm like, I haven't painted Khorne in forever.
Yeah.
Like, I did a bunch of Khorne Berserkers for 40K back in the day, and I haven't really painted anything Khorne in a long time. And I should look, and I could start a Khorne list for Warcry. That'd be real fun. And then I went and started looking at the book, and I'm like, I think I have all these models already here in the basement. And so it turns out I did. I didn't have to even go to the store once. I've got like 2 HQ units that I already had that I was going to use for some other project that didn't go anywhere. And then I had to start collecting box. For them.
Well,
and so,
makes it nice,
yeah, exactly. So that stuff was already there, and just boom, there you go. Built them. I've got 10 Reavers, 5 Blood Warriors, a Skull Grinder, which is a dude, and another dude whose name is maybe the Exalted Deathbringer with Impaling Spear. Something like that. Very specific. Yeah. But yeah, I'll be able to build something out of that, and that's fun. So I'll be painting them after I get done with the Skaven.
Nice.
That's pretty much... Did I do anything else? I don't think so. I think that's all my hobby that's been for since the last episode.
Very nice.
And as far as app updates, I mean, we've been, it's that weird time of the year, and we've been basically just kind of doing...
You've got vacations and holidays and year-end stuff, so there's...
Yeah, we haven't done a ton on that, but the plan is to starting up again in January. We're going to start... road mapping a little bit more and kind of working towards that, so that'll be very cool.
Yeah, that should be probably when we do our looking ahead video. We'll probably talk a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the topic that we've got today is known as Desert Island Tabletop Gaming Picks, and if you could see my notes, you would see that Desert Island is in quotation marks.
Well, deserted island, right? It doesn't have to be a desert island.
Oh, good point. Yeah, you're right. It should be deserted island. It's implied, but technically you could be on a desert island that has a Starbucks on it, really. I mean, people could be living there. So you're right. Deserted island is the actual, and it doesn't have to be really a deserted
No,
island.
you could have water and stuff, but
there could, and they could serve desserts there too. We don't know. But no, this is so this would be a deserted island, someplace that you're stuck. And the question comes from AVS on YouTube.
Yeah, AVS was, I believe that was the one that, like, I believe that person was the one that, like, caught up on all of our podcasts in, like, a 3-week span or something like that.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's a lot of podcasts.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But they reached out in a comment, I believe.
Yep.
On YouTube, and said, question, if you two were stranded on a remote island, so that's a remote island instead of a desert. Anyway, a remote island with 2 other gaming friends with no transport but plenty of food, water, shelter, and gaming tables, which one game would you pick from each of the 4 genres to have with you and you could play for the rest of your island lives? I mean, it gets a little dark here at the moment.
At first you're like, this sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. But still, I think it's a question that's certainly not a bad idea. And so, so basically the whole concept, this is a thing that's been thrown around many times before about like, oh, what's your deserted island, like top 5 albums, that kind of stuff.
Like, what's the movie that if you could only pick one movie to watch the rest of your life, which one would it be?
Exactly. Yep. So it's I think it's an interesting question, and we figured that we would talk about it today.
Absolutely.
Here in this weird week before or between holidays and all that kind of stuff, and it seemed like a good idea. So of the 4 different genres, and what we mean by 4 genres are basically the same 4 genres that we talk about in GameFor, which for tabletop gaming, which are basically board games, CCGs, RPGs, and war games. So board games, we know what board games are. CCGs, collectible card games.
Right.
RPGs, role-playing games, and then war games, miniature war games, that kind of stuff. So do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first? What do you want to do?
How about you kick it off first? Since,
okay.
We're going to be talking about board games.
Yes, I will kick it off. I am not a big board gamer.
What?
I'm not. It's true.
But you have a YouTube channel about board games.
No, it's technically not. It's actually about... I get that a lot, but no. But that being said, there is a board game, probably the board game that I've played the most in my entire life, and I enjoy it. And should probably hop on it again one of these days.
Okay.
Because I do own a copy of it. It's one of the few board games that I own a copy of. And I don't know if it's even in production anymore. Might be. I don't know. But it's a game called Supremacy.
Okay.
And it's from a company that was, strangely enough, if I remember correctly, called Supremacy Games, which seems a little bit like a one-hit wonder. The hit part might not even be the case. I rarely run into people who've heard of it, but I'm sure that it's out there. But so Supremacy, when I explain it to folks, it's a game I used to play when I was in college, like back in the 90s. And Supremacy is a game that is like, how do I want to say this? It's like Risk, but on steroids. So it is you have a big world map, that's the board, and then you start out as a superpower. Each player starts out as a superpower. You pick a superpower randomly.
Okay.
And so you got like America and China and this and that and blah, 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 whatever, all that kind of stuff. So you've got a superpower now, and then you have all these countries that are around the superpowers that are not superpowers. So when you start out the game, you just start going out and taking over the small little country territories that are around you that are not superpowers.
Okay.
And then you get stuff from those. Like when I move out of this country and move into France or whatever, then I get the France card, and France produces a certain amount of grain and a certain amount of minerals every...
Power?
But it's basically the 3 main things are grain, mineral, and oil.
Okay.
And across the top of the board, there is a grain, mineral, and oil like marketplace. And it's just like... And you have a little token that you put down. As you buy more grain, the price of grain goes up because there's less grain available in the market.
Sure,
As you sell grain back, then the price of grain goes down.
Okay, so Power Grid has that kind of mechanic.
Sure.
Yep.
So you're doing that, and the thing is that when infantry moves, an army marches on its stomach, so they eat grain basically as they move, whereas vehicles like boats and stuff like that, you have boats in the game, they go on oil because they're burning gas. And then when you want to build stuff, you have to use also minerals sometimes and this and that. So they have all these different things. And then you're producing a certain amount of stuff, and you're doing all of that. And then we added in a special rule where basically, because otherwise if it at the beginning of the turn, we always would have a roll-off of a D20. Each person would roll off a D20 to see who gets to sell first. Because if I sell a bunch of my stuff before you do, then when it comes to you, the price goes way down.
Sure, yeah.
And
so you take the market.
Right, so you want to be the first to go, and it's a whole thing. And I think we made that was a house rule. But yeah, so you're doing that. You're buying and you're selling and you're moving into territories and you're doing all kinds of stuff and whatever. And eventually you would get to a point where superpower bumps up against superpower, and now there's going to be some fighting and things like that. And you also have technology trees that you're kind of growing as well. In the base game, there are these things called L-stars, which are basically laser satellites. And then there are also nukes. And what happens is you can shoot a nuke at a territory, and an L-star could potentially shoot it down before it lands.
Okay.
And so as you're shooting nukes, if a nuke does land in a territory, you put a black mushroom cloud in that territory. And nobody gets that territory anymore. It is all done. If 12 black mushroom clouds end up on the table, then it's nuclear winter and everybody loses. So that's also kind of fun.
So, somebody on their way out of the game or losing badly can try to make everyone else lose?
Basically, yeah. Oh, yeah. And that kind of stuff happened. And so it was a really cool game. And then the really cool thing about it is it also had a zillion expansions. Because it was like... They would have an expansion. There was one that basically made killer satellites and neutron bombs. So the killer satellites could shoot down the laser satellites. And neutron bombs were like nukes, except they didn't count up to that 12 thing where you have nuclear winter. And then they're mushroom clouds, but they're in your color.
Okay.
So when you shoot a neutron bomb at this territory, all the troops in there die, but like next turn or the turn after, you get first dibs going in there because it's a neutron bomb and not a nuclear bomb.
So like an arms race in expansions.
Oh, yeah. And then there's also submarines. There were tanks. There was a deck just called Fortuna, I believe. That was
how long does a typical game last?
Well, so I worked at this comic shop on Sundays. That was one of my second jobs. This is back in college. This is in the early 90s, and I was going to college, working at the camera store, and also worked at the comic shop on Sundays because the camera store was never open on Sunday. So I would work there at the comic shop and basically get comic discounts and whatnot and all that kind of jazz and whatever. But so me and a bunch of other guys who worked there, we would get together on Thursday nights. I would work until 7 o'clock usually. They would be done with their jobs at whatever time. And I would show up, and I would go to Burger King across the street, and I'd get a couple of burgers, and then we would sit there and start playing, and we would keep it set up in the basement of the comic shop so it wasn't,
Okay.
So we could just leave it set up.
Sure.
Generally, we would play from 7 p.m. until about 3 in the morning because I didn't have to work on Fridays until noon, so it was fine by me.
Okay.
And because I was an art student, I always made it so that I didn't ever have classes on Fridays.
Okay.
You could kind of do that if you were smart about the way you scheduled things. Anywho, so long story short is sometimes it would take us a month. So basically 4 Thursdays, maybe 5 before we would finish. But we would also play very slowly. Like we would never get real aggressive. It was always like build up, build up, build up, build up. And then it was always that last night where just all hell broke loose. And then it was just, nukes flying all over the place and laser satellites and all that kind of jazz. But then one of the expansions that was great was called Pirates and Warlords.
Okay.
And remember how before I was talking about you have a superpower and you just start moving into other countries? Well, Pirates and Warlords, before the game starts, once the superpowers are figured out, you then go and put these little black markers, squares for troops and little ovals for boats in all of the other territories. And then there were rules for if you tried, you could sell nukes to a warlord next to your opponent, and then if your opponent moved in there, the warlords would automatically first strike, and there was all this stuff. So you had to fight your way to take over France and all the other parts. And things. So yeah, that was really cool too. But yeah, I loved the little extra thing about I could sell these extra nukes that I got over to this guy over here, and then your friend is like, well, now why are you selling them to the people who live right next to me? I'm like, oh, no reason. It's fine. It's fine.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. But so it was a super fun game, and I really enjoyed that. And I could see playing that for a really long time. And because there were so many expansions, it's maybe a bit of a cop out, but still, even the base game was still a lot of fun. But with the expansions, it'd be even better.
Nice. Awesome.
So what about you?
Okay. So I almost had to roll a die to figure it out. My first
true gamer.
Yeah. My first thought was Gloomhaven, but I felt like one, it was too close to RPGs, and two, after I played through it once, maybe we wouldn't play through it too many more times. So I was like, but so I ended up going with Spirit Island, which I know I've talked about a few times.
You literally talked about it today.
Yeah, well,
Right, yeah.
right. And that was why, because I've played it, probably 30, 40 times easily now, and I still enjoy every game, and I've yet to see any game be like any other one. So there's enough variety and stuff in it to keep me interested.
And that's not necessarily, well, the fact that you've played it that many times is not normal for a lot of board games.
No, you're right.
As a person, like I said, who doesn't play a lot of board games, I talk to board gamers who are like, oh yeah, I've had this game, but I've only played it twice.
Right, and that's typical of most of my games. Not very many times at all. Probably like a handful.
Because I always wonder when I see board gaming YouTubers and they've always got a giant like shelf full of like their entire backdrop is just all board games, and I'm like, how many of those have you played more than 3 times? You know what I mean? And that's always the question. But
there's probably cellophane on some of them.
Oh yeah. That's you can usually catch a glare off of them. That's true.
But yeah, no, Spirit Island I think's got the enough. Changes and gameplay variants to kind of keep me interested. So
gotcha. And what was the close second? You had
close second was Gloomhaven.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. No, I think that's. I don't know. A close second is fine. I have no problem.
Yeah, but yeah, like I said, if it was like only one game and I couldn't do RPGs or anything else, maybe Gloomhaven would have snuck in to fulfill that kind of both genres. But
I mean, Gloomhaven has got a lot to it.
Right.
So you've got a lot of games you can play there.
I could probably use the box as like a escape raft.
You could probably catch crabs with it.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Yeah. I don't know. Or some other sort of creature, I suppose.
Yeah.
Possibly the most dangerous game.
Keep my coconuts in it.
Yeah, keep your coconuts in there. That'd be important as well. That's a good point.
Yep.
Hadn't thought of that. Nice. All right. Collectible card game. I have never been a huge collectible card game player. I was into Magic a little bit back in the early days. Okay. And when I say the early days, because I'm old, I mean, I think I had some booster cards that were beta.
Okay, yeah.
But most of the stuff that I initially bought when I first started was unlimited. And then the first couple of expansions I got into, too, like Dark Age and Antiquities and Ice Age.
Yep.
Did I say Dark Age?
You said Dark Age, but I
don't think there was a Dark Age, was there? There was Antiquities and Ice Age, and it was maybe a couple. But yeah.
Yep.
So, and then I got out of Magic after that. I mean,
I feel like there was almost like a support group at that time.
There should have been, yeah, really. Well, what I did is
it's been 15 years since I
just took my cards, because normally when I mention that, whenever I mention that to most Magic players, they're always like, "You got any of those old cards?"
Right.
You mean, I'm always like, "No, I traded them for other stuff, like even way back then." Yeah. But in general, that's probably not. It's fine, and I've also played. Steve Jackson Games. When there was the huge boom of all of the different companies that were making, everybody was making a collectible card game up until the point when they got the patent over at Wizards or whatever for a bit or something like that, or they did some sort of thing where all of a sudden everybody owed Wizards money if you were making a collectible card game.
I didn't know about
that has relatively recently expired, as it turns out. Anyway, a different story for a different night. What was my point? So Steve Jackson made a game called Illuminati, which was initially a card game that everything came in one box, but then they made Illuminati New World Order, which was a collectible card game where you would get booster packs and open it up and find out what you get. And I did play a decent amount of that as well, because I was a big fan of Illuminati previously and that kind of stuff. So that all being said, the answer is Keyforge. Now, the answer is Keyforge. Keyforge is relatively recent, like within the last 4 or 5 years.
Yep.
Collectible card game from Fantasy Flight Games.
Yes.
And it's designed by Richard Garfield, who is the designer or one of the designers of Magic the Gathering.
Yep.
The difference is there's no deck building.
Right.
Because you get a deck of 37 cards, technically. One of them is like a check sheet.
I'm impressed that you remember that number.
Well, it's because it's 36, but then I was telling somebody about it just recently, and I'm like, well, no, actually, there must have been 37 because there's a check sheet in there, too.
Okay, yeah.
So you get like 37 cards. And then one of them is like your Archaon, I think, is what the name. Like, you know how like each person's a wizard in Magic the Gathering. In this situation, each player is an Archaon or something, whatever. And then you have that character card, and then you have 35 other cards. And there's no mana or anything like that. There's a bunch of it's an interesting gameplay set. So you don't have to worry about mana, so you don't get mana screwed. And the other thing is, too, you can't deck build because the backs of the cards are digitally printed to match the Archaon. So if I was to take this card and want to trade it with you, that deck wouldn't, or that card would not have the same back as the rest of your cards. And so you're not supposed to do that. You can trade decks, you can sell decks on, but you're not supposed to break up the decks because they're designed to kind of go together.
Right.
It's all like digital printing and random this, that,
and they have like a built-in mechanic for basically balancing decks.
Oh yeah, and well that last card, that check card, where it shows you these are all the decks or all the cards in your deck. There's also a QR code on there,
right? And
then you can use the app and then zap it, and then you keep track of your games, and then that helps to also that helps them to tweak things and stuff like that because they know how decks built a certain way are affecting other decks and this and that and other. And it becomes big data. So I just don't like deck building. For me, it's just never been enjoyable. And so I don't know why, but that's why I think the Keyforge would be the thing. And there have been expansions and such and whatnot. They haven't just did the original ones, but even with just a couple of decks, honestly, I think it would probably be fine.
Yeah.
Again, not being a big CCG player, I can see that. What about you for your CCG?
So kind of had the same level of when I played Magic most. Did run into it again several years ago. But yeah, I because of having basically infinite time.
Sure.
Magic snuck back
is
in.
not necessarily.
Well, having
the rest of our island lives is the actual question.
Yes.
So yeah, that's not infinite.
Having lots of island life left.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm thinking that the building your decks and stuff for me would actually be a plus because I did enjoy doing it. I just ran out of time to be able to do it and not knowing what cards were there. But I think
so. You're saying Magic the Gathering?
Yeah, Magic the Gathering. Yeah. So that's but then I could do it right. I could focus on it like I did back in 6th grade.
I just in my mind I have that bit from Twilight Zone. Like that one with I don't know if it was Burgess Meredith. It's the one where he dislikes everybody and he has all the time he wants to read and then he breaks his glasses. Yeah, I'd be like that, except that you'd be like, I have all the time in the world, but I have no sleeves for my cards. I don't know.
There's no mana cards.
Yeah, or there's no mana cards. That would be a real bummer too. Yeah. But no, that definitely how many cards are there
for Magic?
Yeah, I don't mean like numbers of there's been probably I'm assuming billions at this point maybe that they've produced. I'm talking about different cards
like the unique cards.
Yeah, I thought it was like 50 or 60,000.
I don't know if it's that many, but it's probably up there.
It's got to be a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, if you count all the
it's been out there for what, 25 years, 30 years? How long has that game been out there? It's creeping up on 30, I think.
It's got to be. Yeah. They just had their 25 a couple of years ago. So
yeah. So, if you were going to just get down there and say, okay, well, I have access to all these cards here on this desert island. I mean, you could make a raft out of cards, frankly, at that point. Then.
Oh, yeah.
We could totally get out of there.
Build a bridge.
We'd need glue.
Yeah.
You could probably make glue out of coconuts, right? The professor made all kinds of things out of coconuts on Gilligan's Island.
If you can make radios out of coconuts, you can make a bridge.
Yeah, or something, or glue. A bridge seems like a lot of work. I don't know, but at least a raft.
Yeah.
It's a whole other adventure. Let's see. Role-playing games.
Yes.
So I am a bit basic, and I'm probably going to just say Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I have not had tons of role-playing experience. When I first got into what I like to just refer to as nerd games, as opposed to like Monopoly and other kind of board games you play as a kid, I got into nerd games in 5th grade, and it was with Dungeons & Dragons. So that was kind of my first RPG. I have played 3rd edition and 3.5, and not a ton, but a decent amount on those. I've also played Rolemaster by Iron Crown Enterprises back in college. Post-college, I played Shadowrun. I forget which edition. And then we played 5th edition D&D here in the office for a while on lunch breaks and such. So, yeah, I think for me that would be the one because, I know there's a zillion and one different RPGs out there. But I don't know. I do like this system pretty well. Especially like 5th edition is like from the people who play a lot of RPGs that are friends of mine. They've told me that 5th edition is probably the best edition they've ever had. Which
easily.
So that's good at least, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think that's me. I think that's I mean, because I could, and the benefit, honestly, is that, you could play a big, long campaign with this person, and then once you get done with that, then you can switch to a totally different character.
Right.
Like when we were playing here in the office, I was playing a cleric, and I've never really played a cleric before. Like when I first started back in 5th grade, I was a magic user, and then I was a paladin at one point in the 3rd edition time and stuff like that. So, I want to do something a little differently. My only other option was going to be going maybe towards rogue. I thought about doing that, but yeah. But yeah, it was
it's all good on island time.
Exactly, yeah. And you could, make little dungeon tiles and stuff like that out of, well, probably coconuts again, I'm assuming.
Or leaves.
Maybe leaves, I could see that. Are there monkeys on this island?
It doesn't say.
Because they will. That's a good point, yeah. So I hope not, because otherwise they're going to mess with our stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, probably Dungeons and Dragons for me. It's a pretty basic pumpkin spice latte kind of a choice, but like I said, I know there's a zillion other ones out there.
But there's a reason why people like it.
It's true. It's true. Very good point. What about you?
I was back and forth on the two. Again, Dungeons and Dragons was a close second, but I went with Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and I think the edging it out was one. Being able to have that one source book, because I wasn't positive how many source books I was allowed to have.
That's a good point, yeah.
I had apparently access to all the Magic cards.
Right, so you could probably grab a lot of source books.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and the thing is a lot of the source books for Pathfinder are PDFs, so,
Right.
And you could build easily solar panels and probably an iPad out of, again, coconuts. And so, you're set there.
They're perfect. But yeah, at very least I have that. And the thing that was that I like how unique the players are from level 1. Whereas Dungeons and Dragons, I feel like it's not until 4th or 5th level that your characters, I really feel, start to evolve and feel unique. So.
Yeah, I feel with D&D that there's a definite you've got the people who at the lower level are better at combat. And then you have your more magic usery folks who sort of suck early on.
Right, and then they kind of cross at...
Right, 10th, and then, you get about maybe 10th level, because I remember back when we used to play Neverwinter Nights, which is based off of 3rd edition D&D. When we would first start out playing, we would play these multiplayer games. I remember specifically one weekend, we just had a LAN party over a friend's house, and we started all with first level characters, and we started playing. I was playing a sorcerer, I think. And, we'd be on these maps doing stuff and things like that in the mission. And I'd be like, guys, there's a dog. He's trying to get me. There's a little dog. He's trying to bite me, and then,
run away.
Right. And then Barbarian would come over and go and smash it. And I'd be like, thank you. And then by Saturday afternoon or Sunday or whatever, when we've been playing and we were up in about the 15th, 16th, we'd walk into a room full of guys. I'm like, all right, everybody stand back. And then I would just set the entire room on fire and everything would explode. And then we would just go pick up all of the gold. And so...
lug my loot.
Yeah, exactly.
Barbarian.
Yeah. Everything is hot now. Well, yeah, that's fine. But yeah, so I could see that being, an issue, and Pathfinder seems to... How do they mitigate that? I mean, what do they do?
They just it has more. It's a little bit more complicated. Complex. I said not complicated, but complex. Starting where there's more granularity into how you construct your characters. So you have to put a lot more thought. You can't just be like, "Oh, I'm a rogue and I have a 5-second backstory." You're like, I'm a rogue, but I have, I came from this class, and so then I have these feats and these skills mapped, so I'm better at doing this. So you could have a rogue, but there might be 10 different rogues that are all specialized different already from level 1.
I've always heard that initial Pathfinder First Edition was basically
3.5, right?
3.75 is what I've heard people refer to it as it's a little, because it's a bit of a tweak.
Right.
But 2nd Edition, it sounds like, has gone even further beyond that and split itself away.
Yeah, when I first heard there was 2nd Edition, I'm like, how are they going to do that? But I took the chance on a Humble Bundle after getting told that it was fantastic, and I really enjoy it. It's fantastic.
Cool. So. Yeah, nice. Yeah, no, I think that's pretty cool. And then we get into war games.
Yes,
which is kind of my area.
Dun dun dun.
I was thinking about it quite a bit, and I gotta say that probably, I think it's probably gonna be Warcry.
Okay.
Which is Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry is the full-blown absolute title. And it is, and I'm gonna say because, like I was trying to think of other games that I really enjoy that are maybe more model agnostic, in that you don't need to, like they don't have a model line affiliated with it. You can use whatever miniatures you want.
Yeah.
And there are some of those that I enjoy too, but honestly, some of those don't have much in the way of campaign kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And Warcry's got a nice campaign system, so I'm interested in that. Plus, there's lots of different armies and different things like that. It also doesn't take up a lot of space, so we can keep, we don't have to keep the board set up really big, and the monkeys won't get at it, which is also important. But yeah, I think that at least right now, that seems to be the case. And the other benefit, frankly, to going with Warcry is because we would be on a deserted or remote island or whatever when the new version of Warcry comes out next year. We wouldn't know that.
And you could ignore it.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's also a benefit, I think, to that.
This sounds lovely. I think we need to do this.
Yeah, no, really, honestly, let's sign up. Because really, I want to know where the food, water, shelter, and gaming tables and all that, where...
I was thinking, like airdrop. Did you ever see the movie Double Team with Van Damme and Dennis Rodman?
I do not. I had no idea that was a thing. Holy cow.
I don't remember why, but they're taken to this island that's supposedly you can't escape from.
Okay. And then just dropped off and given food.
And every once a week a plane comes and drops off their supplies.
Seems nefarious. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to honestly complain, I guess, really. I don't know. I mean, eventually I probably would.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'd try to escape, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, for at least a while, I'd be like, well, I got all my needs met.
Yeah.
Needs met, I guess, for the most part.
I don't know. Maybe this is voluntary. Maybe we were like, okay.
That sounds like a heck of a, what do you call that? Retirement, I think, is what the people call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a retirement plan to me. Right
they're
there.
We're done.
I keep hearing from people, they're like, when we get to be old and we're in the retirement home, it's going to be one heck of a LAN party. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. Maybe. Although I think a lot of it'll just be, they'll have to have a certain IT person on staff just to make sure all those relatively older machines keep running. You know what I mean? Because we'll be like, well, but I still need more RAM for my computer. And they're like, Grandpa, we don't use RAM anymore. It's just all VR plug into your brain surgery. And I don't want that. I've got a really good monitor. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Except for the printers would still be like,
no, printers still
you're
work.
out of magenta.
You're out of magenta.
You can't play.
That's not even a color anymore. It's been outlawed. Yeah, no, it's yeah. So yeah, I think Warcry. And honestly, when you think about how long sometimes it can take to paint, it could take a really long time for me to paint as many of the different Warcry warbands that are available out there. So I'm assuming they're going to be airdropping glue and brushes.
I would hope so. That would be...
Again, we're going to have to go to the coconuts probably.
Right.
Yeah, start carving stuff out of coconut shells and making dice out of
wouldn't
coconut
be tournament
shells.
legal at that point.
Well, no, but we also wouldn't have to worry about the ITC or anything like that because we'd be on, a desert island.
Yeah, maybe you have a 3D printer on there.
Made out of coconuts. I'm assuming. I don't know. Again, that documentary, Gilligan's Island. See, the other thing is we're going to have to watch out for the giant spider, too, because that big giant spider that was on Gilligan's Island once in a while, it's 3 feet in diameter.
I don't remember the spider.
You don't remember the spider?
I remember the headhunters all the time.
Right, but there was very frequently a big spider that lived in a cave that was seriously 3 feet long. Oh, and it was just basically pulled around with wires or whatever, but still, it was pretty scary as a kid. I'll have to see if I can find a picture of it. Yeah.
Nope.
So for you, what's your next? What's your war game of choice in this situation?
So, I kind of cheated on this one.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
So I went with the guard systems.
Okay.
So by our friends
over at Gaddis Gaming.
Yes.
Guards, gotcha.
If I had to pick the specific game, then I would go Shattered Crown. And the reason I'll start off with the reason why I like Shattered Crown. Beyond the normal, I don't have to count rivets.
Sure.
Is the roll 10s and balancing? I feel like I'm rolling a lot less dice than the normal. So I feel like my strategy is a little bit better. Sometimes playing Kill Team or any of those, I feel like I'm rolling a bunch of dice just to find out I lost.
Sure, yeah.
It kind of feels like those scratch-off tickets where you're
scratch. Oh,
rather than scratching off 3 things to find out that my dollar didn't do anything, now I have to play a whole crossword puzzle to find out I didn't lose anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I never trust those.
They're like,
but Shattered Crown is
all World War One,
alternate history World War One. So you've got tanks with like energy weapons to some degree,
right,
and all that kind of jazz and stuff.
Yeah, mechs and stuff like that.
Kind of like steam powered, sort of, whatever.
It's,
and then Empire Falls is
World War
II, but also again alternate history type stuff. So you've got some power armor.
The base guard
like
system is that D10 base.
Yeah.
And having talked with Lee and talked about all how he's applied it to different versions, because he's actually, I think he's working on some like guard system applied to like Warhammer
like a sci-fi kind of a thing.
Yeah, but it's not even like a unique sci-fi thing. Like it was like, if you want to play Warhammer, but here's alternate rules using the guard system.
Sure. I mean, you could output like army lists that are just like, here's a bunch of army lists we came up with that will
And then you use use the D10 system for.
Very frequently, you can't call them by their names because you don't. But there's a lot of games that do that. Like One Page Rules does that. Star Breach does that, where they're like, oh yeah, this army, and you read it in the description, and you're like, well, this is the Tau. You didn't call them the Tau because you don't want to get in trouble, but I understand what you're going. And that's cool. I mean, it gives you another way to play with your toys. Frankly.
Right. So that's kind of why I was like, so kind of cheating. If I could use the D10 system and then whatever. Like,
no.
If I want to play airplanes that week, I'm playing airplanes that week.
Do they have an airplanes thing?
Yeah. Empire Falls has flights.
Oh yeah, but I mean, it's not just all airplane game.
No, I could.
Yeah,
you could do like a Battle of Britain or
no, that's true.
Battle of the Islands.
Yeah, no, that's very true. No, that's I think that there's definitely like neither of us lives on a remote island, as it turns out.
Not today. No.
I grew up on an island, which is to say the island in Neenah, Wisconsin, which was just basically this weird kind of lump of land between. It was like in the middle of the river, and you'd cross a tiny little bridge, and you'd be like, "Oh, now we're on the island." And I'm like, "It doesn't look anyway." Yeah. So, but nonetheless, my point is that there are times, specifically in wargaming, let's say, where it's a good idea to have like, I can use this for this, but then also this and this and this and this.
Right.
And I think that some of our other choices as well. Again, talking about maybe expansions. That's why I think expansions are quite popular, because it allows you to play the game that you enjoy, but also play it in a different way, and it doesn't get old.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that there's some definite benefit to that, because it's the other option is to end up having a giant wall full of board games, and then you've only ever played each of them like once or twice, and that kind of stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that
or a box of playing cards. Is
right,
the other extreme. Like,
exactly, yeah. That's a very good point. Yeah,
with 52 cards, how many games are used that?
I mean, I would hope that we would just have a playing card deck too, just because eventually we're going to just play like, I don't know, hearts or something like that. Or
spades.
Whatever. Yeah.
I've always never understood, like, spades and hearts are so close. I always have to have someone
I have no idea
explain to me the difference every time.
I used to play a game that my grandmother called Poker Rummy, which was basically just like you would try to come up with poker hands, and then there was something else that was involved. But it was not poker per se. It was just basically whoever at the end of a turn or whatever had the best poker hand won, and then you did it again. Or so, I don't remember exactly. It was a long time ago, but it was as a kid, it taught me about poker. I guess is that good that your grandma's teaching you about poker at a young age?
Better than learning at a
never took any of my money. So
that was nice.
I mean, well, she was my grandmother. I mean, that's exactly.
She didn't have like a hit out on your brother.
No, she was never just like, "Hey, you owe me $26." And I'm like, I don't have a job, Grandma. I'm 5.
Like, well, you got to.
Looks like you're going to be raking the lawn, which is fine. Yeah. So anyway, thanks again to AVS for the question. It was an interesting question, and it was a fun thought experiment.
Yeah,
and that kind of stuff.
We'd like to hear other people's.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. If you've got some games that you'd like to take onto a deserted island, a remote island, potentially a desert island, maybe even a desert island. Ooh. Desert island.
You can only play on Sundays.
Oh snap! That's rough. All right. But anyway, thanks again for listening to this episode of the GameFor Podcast. If you've got questions or comments and you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment below. If you're listening via your favorite podcast player or just aren't into the whole YouTube comment section thing, then you can feel free to reach out to us via email at podcast@IamGameFor.com. You can also keep up to date with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And check out our website at www.imgamefor.com. That is www.imgamefor.com. Thanks.
Thanks.